Ophof.
Big Tracks by JVC Force. Before Big Tracks, we played Tear the Show Up. And as you may or may not know, justice of creativity, by virtue of creativity for obvious reasons concerning entertainment, is what it stands for. Not as fluently as I would like to have it, but still, that was the acronym for JVC Force. And one of the group members, besides DJ Kurt Kazel and B-Love, is AJ Rok. And we have the pleasure to talking to AJ Love at the moment. Good evening.
What's good? Good evening, Netherlands.
Yeah, all the way from New York City. What's the weather like right there? We had our first really cold day here today.
Well, we had a couple of cold days the last few days. It's warmer today, a couple of snow flurries, nothing much. And it'll be like 50s in the next couple of days.
So snow already in New York.
Yeah, just flurries, though. Nothing that's sticking or anything like that.
Oh, okay. Yeah, well, that causes enough problems by itself. But we're not here to talk about the weather, of course. JVC Force started, recording and putting out albums and singles as soon as 1987. What got you guys started in the rap scene?
Well, I've always been a hip-hop head. I grew up in Mount Vernon, between Mount Vernon and Central Ice of Long Island, and Mount Vernon being right next to the Bronx. You know, I got exposed to a lot of, Cold Crush and a lot of the early scene of hip-hop before recorded records. As far as JVC Force is concerned, I came back to Mount Vernon. My parents got divorced. I moved back to Mount Vernon for high school, and while Kurt and Bill, B-Love, are younger than me, they started doing their thing locally in Central Iceland more and more. So one of the times I went back to visit my mom, who still lived there, a couple of our mutual friends were telling me the stuff Kurt and Bill were doing, and they had basically had a house party or something, and I went to it. Bill had his own little crew, Kurt had his own little crew, which actually was, I think, called JVC at the time. Bill and Kurt decided to get together. And then at this night at the house party, people wanted me to get on the mic, and, it was B-Love set. So, we were going back and forth, not really battling, just, rhyme for rhyme. And people thought that we sounded good together. And the next day, we formed as a trio. They were together already, and we formed as a trio and basically decided to start making music.
So what happened to the crews that were already there?
What do you mean? Well, B-Love had certain crew members down with him, and Kurt had, I guess, a little clique down with him, and combined, they were, a group, just a little crew around town, but the group ended up forming me, B-Love, and Kurt. And the next day, we started going to Kurt's garage and working on routines, and basically that's how JVC formed. And it was another shout out to Robbie Stinger, Rob Louder. He used to do the beatbox. He's actually on what was the first demo, which I'm not on, which is B-Love, Kurt Kazel, and Rob Stinger doing the beatbox and B-Love rapping. The B-side of Strong Island. I can't even think of the name of the song right now. It was the B-Live of the original single. So that ended up, B-Boy ended up picking that up.
Was that something, wasn't that something fresh to swing to? The B-side of Strong Island?
That's not the name of it. It's, oh God, I can't remember the name. I actually can't remember the name of the single to save my life. But B-Boy wanted us to do, they wanted us to do a song for the B-side. That was supposed to be the A-side.
Yeah.
And we ended up doing Strong Island, and, of course, that ended up being the A-side, and end up, what everybody knew us for.
Yeah. Yeah, that was one major impact on the hip-hop scene at that time.
Yes.
Yeah. So what happened after Strong Island?
Song. I'm sorry. Take it away. Take It Away is the title of the single.
Take It Away. Yeah.
Yeah,
that was the B-side.
I'm not on that song. That's B-Love rapping and Kurt DJing and Rob Stinger doing the beatbox. That is the initial song that was the demo that we got signed for.
Okay. But fortunately, Strong Island got to be the A-side and was therefore probably more well-known than the B-side. And I think that kicked off the entire career of JVC Force.
Absolutely. Strong Island probably would have got assigned to any label. A lot of labels were saying that we should have came to them, but we didn't have Strong Island when we were shopping. When we left the studio from doing Strong Island, we had, there's certain times you have that feeling that you have something. We didn't know what we had, and we didn't know going on this January will be the 33rd anniversary of the single being released. We didn't know 33 years later people would still be loving the song, and it would be like this underground cult following of the song. We had no idea, but we knew we had something special, though. Yeah.
So you didn't have a lot when you were shopping around for labels. Ended up at B-Boy Records, which I don't think is a very small-time producer or label.
Well, one of the things we told ourselves with B-Boy was, so you had Boogie Down Productions. They were the number one group on that label at the time. They had just released like South Bronx and Criminal Minded like 6 months before we signed. And we looked at B-Boy. Instead of being like the number 10 group on a big label, we would be the number 2 group. You understand what I'm saying? And then when B-Boy was after Scott LaRock died and after KRS left and went to Jive, we were the number 1 group. We were looking at it at aspects of that. We were young. We didn't know the business. We were doing this because this is what we love to do.
Yeah.
We then learned the business very, very quickly afterwards.
But still, even if we look at today's music, there's still a lot of difference between people that get into the game to get paid or people that get into the game because they are the game.
Yeah, this like hip hop was always something. It was like, again, living in Mount Vernon, the borderline of the Bronx. I used to graffiti. AJ Rok was actually my graffiti name. I was with a group of Mount Vernon called the Graffiti Force, and I lived on the borderline of Mount Vernon in the Bronx, where 4th Street turned to 241st. So my graffiti name was AJ Rok 241, and there was this guy. His name was Derol, D-E-R-O-L, but his graffiti name was Derok, D-E-R-O-C. And I was so impressed that you could spell the word rock without both the C and the K. Yeah. But back then you didn't bite, so I couldn't bite that, so I dropped the C instead of, and I started spelling R-O-K. And there was this other graffiti artist, A.K. Rok, who actually gave me my name, AJ Rok. So I used to tag AJ Rok 241. And, so I did the graffiti thing. I used to do the lettering. I've always been involved in the arts, drawing and lettering and doing flyers and stuff. I started out as a DJ. Most people don't know. I used to play music for my parents' parties and stuff like that on their equipment, and taking the old pieces of their equipment that didn't work and putting them together and using them to make my own equipment and in the basement. And that's how I really got my start.
Cool.
As a DJ.
Cool. So, what first set you off to to explore hip hop? Who were the people that you looked up to? Well,
the 3 people that I credit for making me want to MC professionally was Kumo D, when he was at the Treacherous 3, Melly Mel, and Grandmaster Caz. And I used to see a lot of Cold Crush shows. Yeah. Early on, at the Boys Club and all these different places. And again, living on the borderline of the Bronx, there was a lot of places in the Northeast Bronx that they used to do shows, and I got to see all the groups and stuff. So those are the three that really made me want to like really start writing rhymes and do the MC thing and want to do it professionally.
And we are very lucky that eventually you did. Well, skipping because
they would also be my my hip hop Mount Rushmore if there ever was one. Those three.
That would be cool. let's make that happen in 2021. But skipping a few parts because you started off with the lettering and the graffiti, then got interested and playing songs, getting interested in writing lyrics professionally, and then finally landing Strong Island, which got you all to B-Boy Records. Then a year later, JVC Force came out with the full version album Doing Damage.
Yeah,
what happened then?
Somewhere around August. The single, first off, shout to DJ Red Alert. He's the first person to play Strong Island on the radio a Saturday night, New Year's Eve. So January is the 33-year anniversary of that. The album actually dropped in August, sometime mid-August in '88. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So we doing the songs and stuff. It was a still early part of hip hop where everyone didn't have videos. So a lot of times when they do that era and they show the videos and stuff, we don't actually have any videos. Every group didn't have videos back then. But we got constant radio play. The album led to us doing certain spot dates and tours. We had our own tour in Germany, actually, I think they released a double version of the album with us on one side and Levi 167 on the other side for Germany, which I really didn't like the packaging of that. I think they should have been sold two separately,
Yeah.
But they used one that's selling and they put the other one. Shout to Levi 167. But so we ended up doing tours in Germany and going overseas and doing a lot of stuff and a lot of radio dates and stuff. And we started making a name. The whole Strong Island thing, before we came out, most MCs, most real hip hop was respected. You had to be from one of the 5 boroughs. Mostly Bronx, Brooklyn, Manhattan, or Queens. Staten Island really wasn't getting that kind of love, even though the Force MDs, when they were the Force MCs, and then the Force MDs were from Staten Island. Staten Island wasn't really getting that kind of love, but usually you had to be from the boroughs, and that's what Strong Island was about. We had a lot of talent in Long Island. We sampled Public Enemy, Strong Island, Where I Got a Wildin'. I believe that's Don't Believe the Hype. I'm not sure. That was our chorus. You had Rakim, who said Rough Enough to Break New York from Long Island. But with those exceptions, no one was claiming Long Island like as a place to be from.
Yeah.
Before the song Strong Island, we kind of, borrowed the phrase from Chuck D and kind of coined the phrase and kind of gave pride to be from Long Island. And then people were claiming Long Island more, and were proud to be from Long Island. To Long Island, it was the same as when KRS did the South Bronx, or other people did songs about their area or their region. It gave an identity for Long Island.
Very, very good. You should never be ashamed of where you come from.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So you not only did you make name for yourselves as the JVC Force, but you also put Staten Island on the map as far as it came to being, credible. Long Island. As long as it came to a credibility in the hip hop scene.
Absolutely, and shout to all the people. Long Island has such diverse talent. You had, along with us, you had, EPMD like a couple of blocks away, and Craig Mack, before he was MC Easy and Troop. He did a record in '88. You had De La, which is like a couple of miles over. Then you had a couple of miles past that, you had Rakim. In our area, you had Biz. and K Solo and Keith Murray came from Central Islip after us, and then further down you had Freddie Fox, you had the whole Public Enemy movement, then you had Leaders of the New School that came from that. You had Delphi University, which is where Dr. Dre from Ed Love and Dr. Dre comes from.
Mm-hmm.
And he had a group, and you just had a diverse sound. It wasn't like anything else. They weren't claiming to be from the city. We were talking about different things, and we gave a different perspective.
Exactly. One of the many artists that you named that come from Long Island, you also mentioned Biz. Is that Biz Marquis?
Yes, Biz Marquis. Shout out to Biz.
Yeah.
He used to be around a lot.
Yeah.
He used to be around a lot.
Mm-hmm.
I think he was actually from Coram. Born in Harlem, lived in Coram, or vice versa. But he was always around. That when he says anywhere he laid his mic was his home, he was everywhere. So that's true.
Well, unfortunately, we're going to have some news about him as well on this show. Seems that he's struck it a bit hard and is hospitalized.
Yes, everybody pray for him.
Yeah.
I haven't gotten updated news on him. I think the last I heard he was hospitalized, and I'm asking everybody to pray for my friend, the legendary Biz Marquis.
Mm-hmm.
Keep your prayers for him. And I really haven't had, like I said, I haven't had an update in a while. So I'm praying everything is okay.
Yeah, no, there's not much to tell from our perspective, but that's something for later on in the show. The short version is that he had an episode of diabetes and had a stroke. But is up and awake right now, communicating through FaceTime and all that. So we'll see how he is discharged from the hospital. But that's not for this interview, of course.
Right.
After doing Damage and doing tours both in America and abroad, you dropped the second album, Force Field.
Yeah. So then we had a little creative differences with B-Boy. We started learning the business, realizing they had a lot more of our money than we did, and then we were demanding more, and we ended up getting off the label. Ironically, we had a lawyer who looked at our contract and got us off the label and helped us get on a new label, which is where the next album came out on.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, Idlers.
Yeah, so Idlers. Yes, Idlers Warlock. Yeah. So I liked Idlers Warlock. It gave us freedom to do stuff. We didn't get the promotion and stuff that we did with B-Boy, but and they also tried to change us a little bit. They had the Jungle Brothers single "Girl, I'll House You," and it was that fusion of house music and hip hop, which really wasn't us.
No,
but they wanted us to do a hip hop record, and we did the Forces in the House or something like that, and we ended up doing one. But that wasn't, I think we got away from what was us. We had some strong songs on there. I think Tear the Show Up was on there, which is one of my all-time favorites. Mm-hmm. And there was some quality joints on there, but I still think the first album was more the core of who we were.
Yeah, and then you're getting away from who you are as an artist, and, it gets less interesting to do music then.
Right, and then we started growing, we started doing other things. Kurt got more into production, so we were always a self-contained group.
Yeah.
The writing, the producing, everything, the album cover designs, the pictures on the album covers, everything was us. B-Love did a lot of the writing. I did a lot of the stuff you don't get your name and credits for. I would have to follow up on our manager. Like, I was the manager. I would have to, I would have to do the radio promotions before I knew what radio promotions was. I would do the publicity. I didn't even know what publicity was. I just wanted to get us some magazines. I handled a lot of that stuff, but the stuff you don't get your name and credit for. Kurt did, of course, the DJing and the bulk of the production.
Yeah.
So we were self-contained, and then Kurt started doing production he actually did, and if you ever get your hands on this, I don't know where you can get it from. So when K Solo came out of jail, He was dating a girl who I was dating, her sister, and they brought him to my house, and I took him to Kurt, and Kurt actually produced the first Spellbound, which was a lot harder, a lot hot. It was doper than the original, the one that ended up coming out. It had a lot more hip hop feels, a lot more scratches and stuff in it. And Kurt really did his thing, but there was a falling out. And then we worked in the same studio with EPMD, and they got his attention, and he ended up going. We were between the B-Boy deal and the Eyeless deal, and he ended up going with EPMD. And also, Kurt produced Keith Murray before he was with EPMD, and then Keith ended up going to EPMD as well. So Kurt did a lot of production locally and started branching his wings, and it led to a little strain in the group because all his best stuff was coming to us as he started producing. Some of the other production was getting some of the better stuff. You know what I mean? So we all started growing in different areas, which led to the third album, which you spoke to off air. We then got a chance. We got off Idlers.
Yeah, you went to
signed to
Big Beat.
We signed to Big Beat, and Big Beat. Then, as a package, Atlantic Records brought Big Beat, and for the first time, the one thing we were saying that we never had was major label push, and we were going back to do that. And the third album, the first songs we did was Big Tracks.
Yep, in 1992.
Then there were creative differences, and I ended up leaving the group. And depending on who tells the story that day, I either left or I got kicked out. But the creative differences, I was no longer in the group.
You all parted ways.
And there was a version of Big Tracks without me on it that ended up coming out. And then I had worked on half the album, and then they finished it, and then creative differences with the label, and then the group ended up getting dropped from the label, and that third album never came out. But the third album was back to the feel of the essence of what we had in the first album. And I think it had a lot of great cuts on it. I don't know if it will ever come out in its entirety. But I know that certain cuts came out were released limited edition on some overseas projects, and there have been leaks of a lot of it online. But I don't know if it will commercially ever come out.
Yeah, that would be a shame because we all know that there were vocal tracks recorded, but the great mystery is that nobody knows where the tapes are at the moment.
B-Love, I'm quite sure, has the DATs, because we had DATs or cassettes or whatever of all of the audio, and I wouldn't be surprised if Kurt had some of the production, and then has some. I had moved several times, and I think my copy eventually got lost, so I don't have any copies of it. But I know B-Love he basically would be kind of like the JVC Force historian. He has like almost every article, every picture, I was at his house, he has cassette tapes with my graffiti writing on it, from routines and
cool.
stuff we did in the studio and stuff like that. And, eventually he sends me stuff sometimes. So shout out to my partner, Ron B-Love.
Yeah.
Really shout out to him, and shout out to Kurt. We've created differences. We've gone different ways. So after I left the group, I was always a writer. So people like Wendy Day from the Rap Coalition and others thought it would be cool for some of the up-and-coming hip-hop magazines to have a rapper review other rappers, who writes could actually do reviews of other rappers' albums. So I started doing that, and I started writing for all the, the fanzines, Word Up, Black Beat. I started writing for The Source and Vibe and all of them, and I was part of the one of my favorite times as a writer was a magazine called Off the Top.
Yeah, I think Off the Top.
It was like a former. Yeah, it was a former graffiti magazine from Philly. They moved to New York and wanted to get more in hip hop. And again, Windy Day had a lot to do with me being part of that. And they made me, a small part owner. And we used to do it. Used to, do the stickers, the street team stuff. And it used to be a lot of fun. That was probably one of my most fond memories as a writer, in hip hop. And then after that, I continued freelancing for a lot of people to where I am now. I have my own online Black African American news magazine called Black Westchester. Mm-hmm. Westchester is the county I live in, and Mount Vernon is my home where I was born, and I'm back here. And I'm not really doing too much of the music stuff, but I'm doing more activism and educating people on the political scene and holding politicians' feet to the fire and speaking truth to power and encouraging the next group of activists to come up and speaking to a lot of youth and stuff like that. And that's what I've been doing the last 6 years.
Okay, so you're only
editor-in-chief of Black Westchester.
Yeah, so you're just not making music, but you're still practicing hip hop.
I still play with music. I still write little jingles type stuff. I still write little verses. I still play with my Adobe Audition program and, might play with some music and just spit over it just for my own personal. Probably nobody will ever get to hear it. So I still, have that love and have that passion. When I look for that raw talent, especially from the county I'm from, that raw talent coming up now, and try to give them exposure as well. Using my platform to get them out there.
Yeah, it's 4 to 8 in the evening right here, and I still want to play Strong Island. So I think I'm going to have to cut this interview a bit short. DJ Kurt Kazal, B-Love, if you're listening and you still have the tapes, please get together and try to make this third album still a realization. Make this happen. And to you, AJ Rok, thank you very much for taking the time to talk to us and sharing all the things that you've said tonight.
Oh, man, thank you for having me, man. Anytime.
Yeah, thank you. Well, if you want to stay on the phone, you can still listen to Strong Island. If not, I wish you a very pleasant day there.
Thank you very much.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.